About to do pressed down on her chest like a physical presence, making it hard to breathe. She called Rachel, her voice barely above a whisper to avoid waking the children. Her sister answered on the second ring, as if she had been waiting for this call. No judgment colored her voice, only concern and understanding. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Rachel said simply, and Lisa could hear her already moving, getting dressed. The next few moments passed in a blur of gentle awakening, confused questions, and tearful explanations. Marcus, always the protective older brother, seemed to understand more than the others, his young face set in a mixture of worry and resignation. Sophia clung to Lisa's neck, her small body shaking with sobs she tried to suppress. The twins, still groggy with sleep, asked repeatedly if they were going on an adventure to Aunt Rachel's house. Rachel arrived as promised, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of what was to come. She moved efficiently, helping the children gather their things while Lisa stood frozen, trying to memorize every detail of their faces. The pre-dawn light cast everything in shades of blue and gray, making the moment feel surreal, like a dream she couldn't wake from. "I'll take good care of them," Rachel promised, her eyes meeting Lisa's with fierce determination. "They'll be safe and loved, and when you're ready, they'll be here waiting for you." She pulled her sister into a tight embrace, whispering words of encouragement and support that Lisa barely registered through her grief. The children's departure felt like watching her heart walk away on 8 small feet. Marcus turned back once, his dark eyes full of questions he was too young to ask. Sophia waved until Rachel's car disappeared around the corner, while the twins pressed their faces against the back window, their expressions a mixture of excitement and uncertainty about their impromptu sleepover at Aunt Rachel's house. Left alone in the quiet apartment, Lisa allowed herself one moment of complete breakdown, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor, her sobs echoing in the empty space. Then, with the same determination that had driven her decision, she stood, gathered her own small bag, and walked out the door. She had no clear destination in mind, only the desperate hope that somewhere out there, she could find a way to become the mother her children deserved. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold as Lisa boarded a bus heading out of town. Through the window, she watched her city shrink behind her, carrying with it all her hopes, fears, and most importantly, her precious children. In her pocket, she clutched a small photo of all 4 of them, taken at the park just last weekend. Their smiling faces would be her compass, guiding her back home when she was strong enough to return. As the bus merged onto the highway, Lisa closed her eyes, offering a silent prayer for her children's safety and understanding. She had no way of knowing that her decision would set in motion a chain of events that would transform not only her life, but the lives of everyone she loved. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing remained clear. Her love for her children would be the force that brought her back, stronger and better equipped to be the mother they needed her to be. The city disappeared behind her as the bus continued its journey, carrying Lisa toward an unknown future. In her wake, she left 4 sleeping children in Rachel's care, a sister's promise of protection, and the desperate hope that one day they would understand why their mother had to leave to find her way back to them. The city lights faded into the distance as Lisa's bus carved its path through the dawn. But across town, Rachel's house was stirring to life with the weight of new responsibilities. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon when Emily, Rachel's 11-year-old daughter, discovered her cousins asleep in the living room. She stood in the doorway, her school uniform already pressed and ready, watching the gentle rise and fall of their chests with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The scene before her marked the beginning of a transformation that would reshape their collective lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. Rachel hadn't slept at all, spending the hours between Lisa's departure and sunrise preparing for the monumental task ahead. She moved through her house with quiet determination, reorganizing spaces and making mental lists of everything they would need. The guest room, once a tidy space reserved for occasional visitors, would need to become a permanent sanctuary for the twins. Marcus and Sophia would take the converted attic space she'd been using as a home office. Every change represented another piece of their lives shifting to accommodate this new reality. The morning routine that had once been a well-orchestrated dance between mother and daughter became a complex symphony of needs and emotions. Marcus woke first, his dark eyes scanning the unfamiliar surroundings before remembering the events of the previous night. Rachel watched as he immediately checked on his siblings, his small shoulders carrying a burden no 8-year-old should bear. The sight made her heart ache, reminding her of Lisa at that age, always trying to be the protector. "Would you like to help me make breakfast?" Rachel asked softly, offering him a way to maintain that sense of responsibility while letting him know he wasn't alone. Marcus nodded, padding into the kitchen in his Superman pajamas, his feet making no sound on the cool tile floor. Together, they began pulling out ingredients for pancakes, the simple act of measuring flour and cracking eggs creating a bridge between their old life and this new beginning. The smell of breakfast eventually roused the others. Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, her long dark hair a tangled mess, clutching the stuffed rabbit Lisa had given her for her last birthday. The twins followed shortly after, holding hands as they had since they could walk, their matching sets of eyes wide with uncertainty. Emily, already seated at the kitchen island, immediately made space between herself and Marcus, patting the stool invitingly. "I made your pancakes with chocolate chips," Rachel announced, trying to inject normalcy into this surreal morning. "And there's fresh orange juice in the fridge." She moved with practiced efficiency, having perfected the art of multitasking during her years of teaching and single motherhood. But now, watching 5 children instead of one navigate their morning routine, she felt the full weight of Lisa's trust settling onto her shoulders. The kitchen, usually spacious enough for their small family of 2, suddenly seemed to shrink with the addition of 4 more bodies. Yet somehow, the cramped quarters felt right, as if the house had been waiting for these extra souls to fill its spaces. Rachel found herself choreographing a new dance, helping Anna with her syrup while simultaneously braiding Sophia's hair, checking Miguel's inhaler while reviewing Emily's homework, and making sure Marcus ate something between his self-appointed rounds of caring for his siblings. The morning passed in a blur of activity, each moment bringing new challenges and unexpected joys. Rachel discovered that Sophia couldn't find her left shoe, that Miguel needed his inhaler before any physical activity, and that Anna wouldn't eat unless her food was arranged in perfect symmetry on her plate. Each piece of information was carefully filed away, building a new database of needs and preferences that would become crucial in the days to come. Michael, their next-door neighbor and a constant presence in their lives since Rachel moved to the neighborhood 5 years ago, appeared at the back door just as chaos threatened to overwhelm the morning routine. His arrival was like a breath of fresh air, bringing with him an extra pair of hands and a calm demeanor that seemed to settle the mounting tension. "I thought you might need some reinforcements," he said, holding up a bag of fresh bagels and cream cheese. His eyes took in the scene before him. Rachel's usually immaculate kitchen transformed into a bustling command center, 5 children in various stages of breakfast and preparation, and Rachel herself, looking simultaneously overwhelmed and determined. Michael's presence proved invaluable as they tackled the logistics of getting 5 children ready for school. He helped organize backpacks, tied shoelaces, and even managed to make Anna laugh when she started crying about leaving her favorite crayon at home. His natural ability with children, honed through years of coaching Little League, brought a sense of stability to the chaotic morning. As they prepared to leave for school, Rachel caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Her usually well-put-together appearance showed signs of the sleepless night, but there was something else in her expression, a fierce determination that matched the one she'd seen in Lisa's eyes just hours before. This was more than just helping her sister. It was about preserving the fabric of their family, about giving these children the stability they desperately needed. The drive to school became an exercise in logistics and emotional support. Emily's middle school was first, then the elementary school, where both Rachel taught and the younger children would attend. Throughout the journey, Rachel watched through the rearview mirror as her nieces and nephews processed their new reality. Marcus maintained his protective watch. Sophia hummed quietly to herself, a self-soothing mechanism Rachel had noticed. and the twins whispered their secret twin language back and forth. The school's familiar brick facade loomed ahead, and Rachel felt a new appreciation for its steady presence. As a teacher, she had always seen the school as a second home, but now it would become a sanctuary for her expanded family. She had already emailed the principal and the children's teachers, explaining the situation in broad strokes while requesting their understanding and support. Pulling into her designated parking space, Rachel took a deep breath before turning to address her charges. "Okay, team," she said, trying to inject confidence into her voice. "We're going to take this one day at a time. I'll be right here in the building if you need anything. Emily knows where my classroom is, and she'll help you find your way around." The children nodded solemnly, each processing the information in their own way. As they climbed out of the car, Rachel noticed Michael had followed them to the school, parking his own car a few spaces away. He approached with an easy smile, offering to walk Marcus and Sophia to their classrooms while Rachel handled the twins' registration paperwork. Standing in the school's main office, watching through the window as Michael guided her niece and nephew through the morning drop-off routine, Rachel felt the first real surge of hope since Lisa's departure. They weren't alone in this. The community around them, from Michael's steady support to the understanding looks from her fellow teachers, would help them navigate this uncertain time. The morning sun streamed through the office windows, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. In that moment, Rachel made a silent promise to both her sister and these children who now depended on her. She would be their anchor, their safe harbor in this storm. And somehow, together, they would find their way through this challenge, creating something beautiful from the pieces of their broken plans. As she walked to her classroom, Rachel's mind drifted to Lisa, wondering where her sister was at that moment, hoping she would find whatever it was she needed to heal and return to them. But until then, Rachel would ensure that these children knew they were loved, protected, and part of a family that, though unexpectedly reconfigured, remained unshakably strong. The school bell rang, signaling the start of a new day, a new chapter in their lives. Rachel straightened her shoulders and opened her classroom door, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In her pocket, she carried the note Lisa had left, its words both a burden and a reminder of the trust placed in her hands. The journey ahead would be difficult, but as she watched her newly expanded family disperse into their daily routines, Rachel knew that together, they would find their way through this transformation. The school day unfolded like a delicate origami, each fold and crease revealing new complexities in their situation. Rachel found herself constantly aware of the extra heartbeats within the building's walls, her teacher's instincts now intertwined with an aunt's heightened vigilance. During her free period, she couldn't help but walk past the twins' kindergarten classroom, pausing just long enough to see Anna carefully stacking blocks while Miguel drew with intense concentration. The sight of them, so seemingly adjusted in their new environment, brought both relief and a fresh wave of responsibility. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the classroom windows as Rachel gathered her materials for the day's final lesson. Her third-grade students were engrossed in their history projects, but her mind kept drifting to the logistics awaiting her after the final bell. The carefully structured routine she'd built over years of single parenthood now needed to expand to encompass 4 more children, each with their own needs, fears, and schedules. Michael had texted during lunch, offering to help with the after-school transition. His message included a photo of the groceries he'd picked up, enough to feed an army, or in this case, 5 growing children. The sight of such thoughtful preparation brought unexpected tears to Rachel's eyes. She quickly wiped them away, but not before catching the concerned glance of Mrs. Henderson, the teaching assistant who had been her colleague for the past 7 years. "We've got your back," Mrs. Henderson whispered as she passed Rachel's desk, squeezing her shoulder gently. The simple gesture spoke volumes about the support network that was already forming around their unusual situation. Throughout the day, other teachers had stopped by with offers of hand-me-down clothes, extra school supplies, and even a barely used bunk bed that would be perfect for Marcus and Sophia's new attic room. As the final bell rang, Rachel's classroom became the gathering point for her expanded family. Emily arrived first, already showing signs of embracing her new role as the eldest cousin. She had her homework planner open, making lists of ways to help organize the younger ones' after-school routines. Marcus and Sophia appeared next, their backpacks heavy with first-day paperwork requiring Rachel's signature. The twins arrived last, escorted by their kindergarten teacher, Ms. Powell, who had nothing but praise for their first-day adjustment. "They're remarkably resilient," Ms. Powell noted, her kind eyes meeting Rachel's. "Miguel helped Anna during our time when she couldn't reach the blue paint, and Anna made sure Miguel used his inhaler after recess. They look out for each other." The observation carried a weight of understanding. These children had already learned to create their own support systems, a skill that would serve them well in the days ahead. The drive home became an impromptu family meeting, with each child sharing moments from their day. Sophia's excitement over being chosen as line leader competed with Marcus's quiet pride in helping a classmate with math. The twins took turns finishing each other's sentences as they described the classroom pet, a hamster named Mr. Whiskers. Emily announced her plan to teach her cousins the shortcuts through the school hallways, her natural leadership abilities shining through. Michael's truck was already parked in their driveway when they arrived home, and the smell of cooking wafted from the kitchen windows. Rachel felt a surge of gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. He had used his spare key, given to him years ago for emergencies, to start dinner preparations. Through the kitchen window, she could see him moving confidently around her kitchen, stirring something that smelled wonderfully like his famous spaghetti sauce. The children tumbled out of the car with renewed energy, drawn by the promise of food and the comfort of finally being able to relax after a day of putting on brave faces. As they approached the front door, Rachel noticed subtle changes to her home's exterior. Michael had set up additional hooks on the porch for backpacks, and a new welcome mat large enough to accommodate multiple pairs of shoes lay before the door. Inside, the house had already begun its transformation. The living room, usually pristine and arranged for adult conversation, now featured cleverly organized homework stations. The coffee table had been pushed aside to make room for comfortable floor cushions, and new storage bins labeled with each child's name waited to contain the inevitable scatter of schoolwork and art projects. "I hope you don't mind," Michael said, appearing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "I had some time between appointments today, and I thought—" He gestured to the changes, suddenly seeming unsure of whether he had overstepped. Rachel's response was cut off by the children's enthusiastic reaction to the space. Sophia immediately claimed a purple cushion, while the twins gravitated toward the matching blue bins bearing their names. Marcus approached more slowly, but Rachel could see the relief in his shoulders as he realized he would have a dedicated space for his schoolwork, something that had been lacking in their cramped apartment. "It's perfect," Rachel finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Michael." Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, Rachel felt the first stirrings of something beyond gratitude. Here was a man who not only recognized what they needed but took action to provide it, all while respecting the delicate balance of their new family dynamic. The evening evolved into a chaotic but heartwarming scene of homework supervision, dinner preparation, and the establishment of new routines. Michael stayed, helping Marcus with his math while Rachel worked with Sophia on her reading. Emily took charge of the twins, engaging them in an educational game on the tablet that kept them occupied while still developing their skills. The house, which had seemed so quiet just that morning, now hummed with the energy of lives intertwining and adapting. As they gathered around the dining table, expanded by a leaf Michael had thoughtfully installed, Rachel observed the subtle shifts in dynamics. The children naturally arranged themselves with Emily between the twins, ready to help cut their spaghetti into manageable bites. Marcus sat at Rachel's right hand, while Sophia chose the seat next to Michael, shyly asking him to help her twirl her pasta the right way. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and the occasional spilled drink, quickly mopped up without drama. Rachel found herself cataloging mental notes. Miguel preferred his garlic bread without butter. Anna would only eat pasta if the sauce was on the side. Sophia needed her food separated into distinct sections on her plate. Each detail was another thread in the tapestry of their new life together. After dinner, as Michael helped with dishes and the children settled into their evening routines, Rachel retreated to the back porch for a moment of quiet reflection. The day's last light painted the sky in shades of purple and orange, and the early evening air carried the first hints of autumn's approach. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through the photos she'd taken throughout the day, small victories and tender moments she wished she could share with Lisa. The screen door creaked softly as Michael joined her on the porch, offering a cup of tea. "One day down," he said quietly, settling into the chair beside her. "You're doing amazing, Rachel. These kids are lucky to have you." Rachel cradled the warm mug in her hands, letting its heat ground her in the present moment. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "Any of it." The simple acknowledgement felt inadequate for the depth of support he had provided, but Michael's gentle smile suggested he understood. Inside, they could hear the sounds of Emily reading a bedtime story to the twins, her voice rising and falling with the drama of the tale. Marcus and Sophia were in the kitchen, carefully packing their lunch boxes for the next day, another routine Michael had suggested to help them feel more in control of their new circumstances. As the night settled around them, Rachel felt the first real sense of peace since Lisa's departure. They were far from having everything figured out, but they had made it through day one. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but it would also bring new opportunities to strengthen the bonds forming within their unconventional family unit. Michael's presence beside her offered silent support as they watched the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would come soon enough, but for now, in this quiet moment, Rachel allowed herself to believe that they would not just survive this change, but find a way to thrive within it. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but they would walk it together, one step at a time. The peaceful moment on the porch was interrupted by a soft thud from inside, followed by the unmistakable sound of Miguel's wheezing. Rachel and Michael exchanged a quick glance before rushing inside, their movements synchronized by shared concern. They found Miguel at the bottom of the stairs, his inhaler already in hand thanks to Marcus's quick thinking. The older boy hovered protectively over his younger brother, demonstrating once again his innate ability to anticipate and respond to his siblings' needs. "I just got excited running down the stairs," Miguel explained between puffs of his inhaler, his breathing gradually steadying. "I wanted to show Aunt Rachel the drawing I made of our new family." The mention of the drawing brought Rachel's attention to the paper clutched in his other hand, now slightly crumpled from his fall. As Miguel's breathing normalized, he carefully smoothed out the paper, revealing a colorful illustration that made Rachel's heart catch in her throat. There they all were, drawn in the endearing style of a 4-year-old. Rachel and Michael standing together. She noted with interest that he had drawn them holding hands, Emily and Marcus looking tall and protective, Sophia with exaggerated pigtails, and the twins holding hands as always. But what struck Rachel most was the small figure Miguel had drawn floating above them all, Lisa, watching over their newly formed family with a smile. The rest of the evening unfolded in a series of tender moments and minor crises that Rachel was quickly learning to navigate. Sophia couldn't find her favorite pajamas, leading to a house-wide search that ended when Emily remembered seeing them in the dryer. Anna refused to brush her teeth until Michael invented a game that turned the mundane task into an adventure, complete with sound effects that had all the children giggling. Throughout it all, Rachel observed the subtle ways their household was adapting, creating new patterns and rhythms that somehow felt both foreign and familiar. As she moved from room to room, helping with bedtime routines, Rachel noticed the small changes that had already begun to transform her home. The neat stack of fashion magazines that usually occupied her bedside table had been replaced by children's bookcase and a notepad where she'd started jotting down important details about each child's preferences and needs. The pristine guest room now bore signs of the twins' presence. Stuffed animals arranged carefully on pillows, a nightlight casting gentle shadows on the wall, and 2 pairs of tiny slippers placed precisely at the foot of each bed. Michael lingered until the last child was tucked in, his presence a steady anchor throughout the evening chaos. As they stood in the hallway between bedrooms, listening to the gradual settling of young bodies into sleep, Rachel found herself studying his profile in the dim light. He had always been there, a constant in their lives since she and Emily moved to the neighborhood, but something had shifted in their dynamic over the course of this single day. Stay for a glass of wine? She found herself asking, surprising them both with the invitation. The day's events had left her simultaneously exhausted and wired, craving adult conversation and a moment to process everything that had happened. They settled in the kitchen, the only room that still somewhat resembled its former self, though even here changes were evident in the expanded collection of cups and plates drying beside the sink, the new chart on the refrigerator tracking medications and allergies, and the bowl of fruit that had mysteriously appeared sometime during the day. Michael's doing, she suspected. I keep waiting for it to hit me, Rachel confessed, swirling the red wine in her glass. The enormity of what I've taken on. But every time I start to feel overwhelmed, something happens that makes it all feel right. Does that make sense? Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. You're building something beautiful here, Rachel. It's not conventional, and it won't be easy, but watching you with those kids today. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You're giving them exactly what they need, stability, love, and the space to process this change in their own ways. The conversation flowed easily between them, touching on practical matters like carpooling arrangements and weekend activities, but also delving into deeper waters. They discussed their own childhood experiences with family transitions, shared concerns about helping the children maintain their connection with Lisa while establishing new routines, and gradually began to acknowledge the shifting nature of their own relationship. As the evening wore on, Rachel found herself sharing things she hadn't even admitted to herself yet, her fears about failing the children, her worry for Lisa, her guilt over the moments when she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility she'd taken on. Michael listened with the same steady presence he'd shown all day, offering support without trying to solve everything. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight before they realized how late it had grown. As Michael gathered his things to leave, Rachel caught his hand, the gesture surprising them both. Thank you, she said simply, knowing the words were inadequate, but hoping he understood the depth of gratitude behind them. His response was to squeeze her hand gently before letting go. Get some sleep, he advised, his voice soft. Tomorrow's another day of adventure. After he left, Rachel made one final round of the house, checking on each sleeping child. In the twins' room, she adjusted Miguel's inhaler, so it would be within easy reach. Sophia had kicked off her blankets. Rachel tucked them back around her small form. Marcus, ever the protector, had fallen asleep with a book about helping younger siblings propped on his chest. Emily's contribution to helping him understand his role in their new family dynamic. In her own room, Rachel finally allowed herself to fully process the day's events. She opened her journal, a habit she'd maintained since college, and began to write. The words flowed freely, capturing the mix of emotions that had characterized this first full day of their new reality. As she wrote, she found herself addressing parts of the entry to Lisa, sharing observations about the children, documenting small victories and challenges, maintaining a connection with her sister even in her absence. The night deepened around her as she wrote, the house settling into unfamiliar creaks and sighs as it adjusted to its new occupants. Through her window, Rachel could see Michael's house next door, a single light still burning in his study. The sight brought a warmth to her chest that she wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, school forms to complete, routines to establish, emotions to navigate. But as Rachel finally prepared for sleep, she felt a deep sense of rightness about the path they were on. This wasn't the life she had planned, but somehow it was becoming the life she needed, not just for her sister's children, but for herself as well. The last thing she did before turning out her light was pin Miguel's drawing to her bulletin board, where it would be the first thing she saw each morning. The crayon figure smiled back at her, a reminder that family isn't always what we expect it to be, but rather what we make of the love we're given to hold. As sleep finally claimed her, Rachel's last thoughts were of the day ahead, her mind already planning and organizing, but also looking forward to the unexpected moments of joy that she was learning to recognize in this new chapter of their lives. The sound of soft breathing from the rooms around her created a gentle symphony of family, different from what she was used to, but beautiful in its own right. The moon cast gentle shadows through her window, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird called. In the quiet darkness, Rachel felt the first stirrings of something new taking root. Not just the responsibility she'd accepted, but the possibility of a future she hadn't imagined until now. With that comforting thought, she drifted off to sleep, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to paint the sky when Rachel stirred from her sleep, awakened by unfamiliar sounds filtering through the house. For a moment, she lay still, orienting herself to this new reality as the events of yesterday filtered back into her consciousness. The gentle pad of small feet in the hallway, whispered conversations, and the subtle creaks of her old house adjusting to its new occupants created a symphony she was only beginning to learn. A soft knock at her door preceded Emily's head peeking in. "Mom," she whispered, though Rachel was already clearly awake. "The twins are up, and Miguel's looking for his blue dinosaur pajamas. Also, I think Sophia's having a rough morning." The matter-of-fact way her daughter reported these developments made Rachel's heart swell with pride. Emily had adapted to their new family dynamic with a grace that continued to amaze her. Swinging her legs out of bed, Rachel caught sight of Miguel's drawing on her bulletin board, the crayon figures seeming to glow in the early morning light. She took a moment to center herself, drawing deep breaths as she prepared to face whatever challenges this new day might bring. The weight of responsibility settled around her shoulders like a familiar cloak, but now it felt less overwhelming and more like a purpose. The hallway outside her room had become a hub of quiet activity. Anna sat cross-legged on the floor, methodically organizing her stuffed animals, and what Rachel was learning was her way of processing change. Miguel hovered nearby, still in his mismatched pajamas, clutching his inhaler and watching his sister with concerned eyes. The bond between the twins seemed to have grown stronger in the face of their mother's absence, their silent communication more pronounced than ever. Sophia's quiet sniffles drew Rachel to the attic stairs. She found the 6-year-old curled up in the window seat they'd created yesterday, her small frock silhouetted against the growing dawn. Marcus sat beside her, one arm around his sister's shoulders, murmuring words of comfort that seemed beyond his years. The sight stopped Rachel in her tracks. The strength and vulnerability captured in that moment telling the story of their family's transformation more eloquently than words ever could. "I had a dream about Mama," Sophia explained without looking up, her voice thick with tears. "She was trying to find us, but she couldn't see us waving to her." The simple description of her nightmare cut straight to the heart of their shared fears, and Rachel found herself moving forward instinctively, gathering both children into her arms. "Your mama knows exactly where you are," Rachel assured them, her voice steady despite the ache in her heart. "And she carries you with her every moment, just like you carry her in your hearts." The words felt insufficient against the magnitude of their loss, but Sophia's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Marcus's grip on his sister eased. A gentle tapping at the window drew their attention. A cardinal, its bright red feathers stark against the morning sky, had landed on the outer sill. "Look," Rachel whispered, seizing the moment of distraction. "Cardinals are supposed to be messengers of love. Maybe this one is carrying our love to your mama right now." The idea captured Sophia's imagination, and soon she was pressing her small hand against the glass, whispering messages she wanted the bird to carry. Marcus remained quiet, but Rachel noticed him watching the cardinal intently, his young face a mixture of hope and skepticism that made her heart ache. The moment was interrupted by the smell of coffee wafting up from below, accompanied by the unmistakable aroma of Michael's cinnamon rolls. Rachel hadn't heard him come in, but she wasn't surprised. He had somehow developed an uncanny sense of when they needed him most. The prospect of breakfast seemed to lift everyone's spirits, and soon the attic was emptying as children made their way downstairs, drawn by the promise of sweet pastry and familiar comfort. In the kitchen, Michael had transformed the early morning chaos into something manageable. He'd already set up the twins with their favorite breakfast plates, the ones with built-in dividers that kept their food from touching, and was showing Emily how to swirl the perfect amount of cinnamon into the roll's icing. The scene was so domestic, so natural, that Rachel felt her breath catch in her throat. "I hope you don't mind," he said, catching sight of her in the doorway. "I was up early thinking about some ideas for the backyard. Maybe a swing set or a small garden the kids could help with. And I thought. He gestured to the breakfast spread, suddenly seeming unsure of himself. Rachel's response was to cross the kitchen and squeeze his arm, the gesture carrying all the words she couldn't quite form yet. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, she saw her own mix of determination, fear, and hope reflected back at her. The connection was broken by Anna's delighted squeal as she discovered Michael had arranged her cinnamon roll to look like a flower, complete with icing petals. The morning routine began to take shape around them, each child finding their place in this new pattern they were creating together. Marcus helped the twins with their napkins while Sophia set out everyone's vitamins, carefully matching them to the chart Rachel had created. Emily moved between them all like a gentle breeze, offering help here, a kind word there, somehow anticipating needs before they arose. As Rachel watched her expanded family navigate breakfast together, she found herself reaching for her phone, wanting to capture this moment to share with Lisa someday. The morning light streaming through the kitchen windows caught the steam rising from coffee cups, the sparkle in children's eyes, the way Michael's hand unconsciously steadied Miguel's glass when it wobbled. All these small details that were becoming the foundation of their new normal. Looking through the camera lens, Rachel suddenly noticed something she'd missed before. They had unconsciously arranged themselves around the table in a way that left an empty chair, as if keeping space for Lisa in their midst. The observation brought tears to her eyes, but they weren't entirely sad tears. There was something beautiful in the way they were holding space for her sister while still moving forward, learning to be both complete in themselves and open to her return. The cardinal appeared again, this time landing on the back porch railing visible through the kitchen window. Sophia gasped in delight, pointing it out to everyone. "He's bringing Mama our messages," she declared with the absolute certainty only a child can muster. The adults exchanged glances over her head, but no one contradicted her. Sometimes, Rachel was learning, hope came in the most unexpected packages. As they finished breakfast and began preparing for the school day ahead, Rachel found herself moving with more confidence than yesterday. The routines were still new, the emotions still raw, but something had shifted in the space of this early morning gathering. They were no longer just managing a crisis. They were building something new, something that honored what was lost while embracing what could be. Michael stayed to help with the dishes, his presence so natural it seemed strange to remember a time when their mornings hadn't included him. As the children disappeared upstairs to dress for school, he turned to Rachel with a thoughtful expression. "I was thinking," he began, then paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "The weekend's coming up, and the kids might need something to look forward to. What if we started that garden project? Nothing too big, just something they could call their own?" The suggestion hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than just a simple weekend activity. It was an invitation to put down roots, to believe in a future that extended beyond the immediate crisis. Rachel found herself nodding, already imagining the children's faces as they planted their first seeds, watched them grow, learned to nurture something new from the ground up. The metaphor wasn't lost on either of them. The weight of that unspoken understanding lingered between them as the morning sunlight strengthened, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. Michael began sketching a rough garden plan on the back of a receipt, his architect's training evident in the precise way he mapped out spaces for each child to have their own small plot. Rachel watched his hands move across the paper, struck by how he naturally included elements that would appeal to each child's personality. A fairy garden section for Sophia, sturdy tomato plants for Marcus to tend, matching flower beds for the twins. "We could start this weekend," he suggested, adding details as he spoke. "I know a nursery that specializes in child-friendly plants. They even have these miniature tools that would be perfect for the twins." His enthusiasm was contagious, and Rachel found herself leaning closer, their shoulders touching as they bent over the impromptu garden plan. The moment was interrupted by a thundering of feet on the stairs as the children returned, transformed from their pajama-clad breakfast selves into school-ready versions of themselves, mostly. Anna's shirt was on backward, Miguel's shoelaces remained stubbornly untied, and Sophia had attempted to braid her own hair with creative but somewhat chaotic results. Rachel and Michael exchanged an amused glance before smoothly dividing to conquer. He moved to help Miguel with his shoes while she guided Anna through the process of properly orienting her shirt. Emily, proving once again her worth in gold, had already noticed Sophia's hair situation and was gently working to remedy it with skilled fingers and patient words. "Can I tell? You est okay?" Rachel heard Emily whisper to Sophia as she worked on the tangled braids. "When I was your age, I used to try to braid my own hair too. Want to know what helped me learn?" Sophia nodded eagerly, and Rachel watched as her daughter began teaching her cousin the mirror technique she'd perfected over the years. The simple interaction spoke volumes about how their family bonds were strengthening and evolving. Marcus appeared last, his backpack already perfectly organized, wearing an expression that Rachel was learning to recognize as his responsible oldest brother face. He carried not only his own things, but also had somehow managed to gather the twins' forgotten homework folders and Sophia's lunchbox. The weight of his self-imposed responsibilities showed in the slight slope of his young shoulders. "Hey, buddy," Michael called out, having finished with Miguel's shoes. "I could use your help with something." He pulled out the garden sketch, and Marcus's face lit up with interest as Michael began explaining his ideas. "I was thinking you might be the perfect person to help design the vegetable section. You seem to know exactly what everyone likes to eat." The simple acknowledgement of Marcus's caretaking nature, while redirecting it towards something positive and age-appropriate, was so skillfully done that Rachel felt a rush of gratitude toward Michael. He had an intuitive understanding of what each child needed, often before they knew themselves. As the morning routine continued its choreographed chaos, Rachel found moments to observe these small interactions that were reshaping their family dynamic. Emily showing the twins how to pack their backpacks in a way that made it easy to find everything. Sophia carefully placing her drawing from art class in a folder labeled for Mom, a habit Rachel had noticed she was developing, collecting things to share with Lisa when she returned. Marcus relaxing incrementally as he and Michael discussed different vegetables they could grow, his expertise and his siblings' preferences being valued rather than burdening him. The garden plans expanded as each child contributed ideas during the rushed, but somehow still meaningful breakfast cleanup. Anna wanted to grow strawberries because they were Lisa's favorite. Miguel suggested sunflowers tall enough to touch the sky. Sophia hoped they could plant some of the flowers she remembered from their old house. And the wistful note in her voice prompted Rachel to make a mental note to ask Lisa about the specific varieties when she next had a chance to communicate with her sister. Michael's presence had become so natural that when he announced he needed to leave for work, there was a collective moment of disappointment from the children. He promised to return that evening with more detailed garden plans, and maybe even some catalogs they could look through together. The casual mention of evening plans, unforced and unremarkable, struck Rachel as significant. Their lives were weaving together in ways that felt both surprising and inevitable. Before he left, Michael pulled Rachel aside briefly. "I was thinking," he said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone, "maybe we could set up a small greenhouse too. Nothing fancy, just a simple structure. It could be something permanent, something growing." The layered meaning in his words wasn't lost on her, nor was the careful way he watched her reaction. Rachel found herself nodding, unable to fully express how much it meant that he was thinking not just about immediate needs, but about their future. The greenhouse would be more than just a place to nurture plants. It would be a symbol of growth, of putting down roots, of believing in tomorrow. As they gathered the last of their things for the school day, Rachel caught sight of their reflection in the hallway mirror, Michael helping Miguel with his backpack, Emily braiding Sophia's hair one last time, the twins comparing their matchee. In lunch boxes, Marcus studying the garden sketch with intense concentration. The scene looked so natural, so right, that for a moment she forgot to breathe. The cardinal appeared once more, landing on the front porch railing as they prepared to leave. Sophia's delighted gasp drew everyone's attention, and for a moment, they all stood watching the bright red bird against the morning sky. Rachel felt Michael's hand brush against hers, a ghost of contact that somehow anchored her in the present while promising something for the future. "Maybe," Sophia whispered, her eyes bright with hope, "the cardinal can tell Mama about our garden, so she'll know where to find the strawberries when she comes home." The simple statement carried such faith in both Lisa's return and their ability to create something lasting in her absence that Rachel had to swallow hard against the sudden tightness in her throat. Michael squeezed her hand quickly before stepping away to his car, his presence leaving an almost physical absence in the morning air. The children began piling into Rachel's vehicle, their chatter now focused on plans for the garden and speculations about what they might grow. As Rachel adjusted the rearview mirror, she caught sight of Marcus watching Michael's departing car with a thoughtful expression that seemed far too mature for his 8 years. The morning sun had fully risen now, burning away the last traces of dawn mist and promising another warm, early autumn day. As Rachel backed out of the driveway, she found herself already looking forward to the evening, to more garden planning, to the simple act of building something new with these people who had become so precious to her. The cardinal took flight as they pulled away, its red feathers catching the sunlight like a promise. Their day was just beginning, but already Rachel could feel the shape of it forming. Not just this day, but the days to come. They were creating something here, something that transcended the circumstances that had brought them together. In the back seat, she could hear Sophia humming softly, the twins whispering their secret language, Marcus pointing out something in the garden sketch to Emily. Each sound was another thread in the tapestry of their new life, complex and beautiful in ways she was only beginning to understand.